Ionavators, welcome to the Ionavation Podcast. I'm your host, Aiden Rodriguez.
And I'm your co-host, Olivia Yarashik.
And with us today, we have our designer in residence at our Hynes Institute, Lisa Yokana. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you.
So before we dive into things a little bit, we want to get to know more about you. So if you could just tell us about yourself, your background.
Okay, great. So I was am an educator for over 25 years. I have one of those careers that's been all over the place. I have a master's in art history. I worked at the Guggenheim. But I think my love has always been education. But I got to this point where I was teaching studio art, actually in architecture, and I realized that kids weren't engaged in the same way. So I went out and looked for processes. I figured I was the only one noticing this. So I looked around and found design thinking and found different people who were excited about using design thinking in education. Making. I was really interested in making as a concept. And I worked with IDEO when they had Teachers Guild, which was essentially facilitating innovation from teachers from around the world. I also have been involved with a project at Harvard Graduate School of Education called Agency by Design, which is really looking at the thinking and learning in a maker-centered classroom. I've been involved with that since its origin in 2012. And I brought all of that into my classroom and then created a STEAM program at Scarsdale High School that I taught for the last 8 years, which culminated in a social entrepreneurship capstone class. And that class was amazing. And kids would actually create real ventures that would live on beyond them, that solved UN SDGs, but looking at the UN SDGs locally. And I also created a global entrepreneurship challenge while I was at Scarsdale, and we asked 14 schools from around the world to join us on this entrepreneurial venture. And we had these great cross-cultural conversations that really sort of made my students look at things from a new light. And then last year I began here as an adjunct and became designer in residence in the spring. And I am loving that role. I also do a lot of educational consulting, bringing innovation, entrepreneurship, and maker-centered learning to educators in the K-12 space.
What's great about our experts in residence is that regardless of your major, you can come talk to them about any projects that you may have. So Lisa, can you tell us about any projects and ideas that you've worked with students?
This semester I've been working with a lot of the education students here, working with their professors, really trying to help them understand that design thinking and innovation is something that they really need to do in their classrooms, and not only working with their students in that way, but also designing curriculum that way. So really thinking about what do they want for their students, and trying to think about how can we create education students who are active participants and have agency and think like innovators and entrepreneurs, because certainly our education system needs that.
What gets the students' gears going in terms of coming up with new ideas and stuff like that?
The education students.
Yeah.
I think, what we did with them was we had them bring problems that they were facing. These were student teachers, right? So they're already in schools, working in different classrooms. And we asked them to bring some of the issues that they were seeing in their classrooms or in the classrooms that they were working in. And we put them out there. They were actually working with my social entrepreneurship students, and my students were the experts, which was kind of fun for them. And we basically had them choose which problem they wanted to work on. Okay. And then they went through the innovation cycle, the design cycle, to create, to understand a little bit more about the problem, and then to brainstorm. And we sort of ended with them coming up with ways to sort of test their ideas in the classroom. So for example, there were some elementary teachers who were talking about how when kids come back from specials or lunch, it takes them forever to settle down. And so we talked about putting a timer up on the screen and and having students, talking to the students about what do you need in order to settle back down, just so that kids could learn to transition.
Yeah.
And I think for educators, sometimes you feel like you're at the mercy of the system. And so helping them understand that the system is something that, maybe they can't really change, but they can hack, right? They're not going to change that kids have to leave the classroom and go to specials or go to recess, but they are going to be able to think about, wow, what can I do as I'm thinking about that? It'll change this dynamic. Coming up with just simple solutions.
Yeah, no. And one thing that really stuck out to me was you talked about the innovation cycle. Could you go like a little bit more in depth on what the innovation cycle really is?
Yeah, I think for me, always the innovation cycle is trying something, getting something out there, thinking about, what's the simplest thing I could do to test, and feedback, and then reiterating continuously. It's actually a viable idea or a product or system that works or service.
Yeah, I'm glad you explained it, because I feel like coming up with new ideas, coming up with new ways how to do things, I feel like that's really important. Why don't you go into some of the success stories that you've had with students of the past?
Okay, at Iona. So last year I worked with two occupational therapy students who were, they had a great idea, which was a board game that teachers or parents could use with their students. And it would allow parents or teachers to do more of the occupational therapy kind of training. And it was around students' fine motor skills. Actually, I think it was like all the different aspects of what OTs do with young elementary school children. And it was a super simple idea, but they prototyped it, they tried it, they tested it with students, and they would just keep coming back to me, and we were meeting on Zoom at that point. But it was exciting to see them evolve, right? And their idea evolve as they went through this process. And all they really needed from me was just kind of, just go test it, keep trying it, and then helping them reflect on what they needed to change. And they ended up winning a prize, second, third in the innovation, innovation challenge last week. Very exciting.
Awesome.
Right?
It's like birds leaving a nest.
Well, it's just, the idea that you can have an idea or you can see a need, right? They were working with these students and they realized that there weren't enough OTs to go around.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, what can we do? What could we create? And so they literally just created a simple game out of paper and markers and whatever, and tried it, and it worked. And so they identified a need, a gap, and then they tried something. And I think they're gonna actually take it all the way, which is really exciting.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So to go off what you said, because you said all they needed was your push, do you have any advice for students to get their idea off the ground?
Yes, absolutely. I think the number one thing is just do it. Like, just try it. So many people, myself included, have ideas that just live in our heads all the time. And I think there's this sort of fear of failing. Like, who cares, right? Just get it out there, try something. And it doesn't have to be this mega high level thing that you do. It can be just a simple MVP, minimal viable product, right? You can just try a thing. I'm doing this with my class right now. It's like, if this is true, if you have a hypothesis and this is true, then your idea will fail. Test that. That's all you have to do, and all the OT students did was like make stuff out of construction paper and markers and like just try it with their kids. And I would encourage people to just try things, because that's how you learn. And failure has so much negative connotation, but trying something, learning from it, trying again, that's just so important. And I think that there are not enough people willing to or brave enough to just try things. We all need to.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
So this was great, Lisa. Just one more question. What are the steps that students need to take to come into contact with you for anything?
Yeah, students should feel free to reach out to me. I have office hours Mondays from 1 to 3. So I'm always at Hynes then. And they can just drop in, and or they can come and make an appointment. They can do it through Hynes, and I'm just happy to meet with anyone. and talk about their ideas or help them on, something they're working on. Pretty much anything.
Well, that's going to wrap things up. Thank you all for tuning in to the Ionavation Podcast. Please subscribe for more great content like this. I've been your host, Aiden Rodriguez.
And I'm your co-host, Olivia Yarashek.
And we will see you in the next one.